That is how finely tuned the cosmological constant is. Is that a coincidence? It's mind-boggling. Now, if you just add together the fine-tuning of gravity and the cosmological constant, the two that I've talked about, the fine-tuning would be to a precision of 1 part in 100 million trillion, 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 trillion.
Well, congratulations. You know how to multiply fractions. That's good. That's good for you. However, the fractions that you're multiplying, the numbers, you're just pulling them out of your ass.
In other words, this fine-tuning would be the equivalent of 1 atom.
I don't know about the size of 1 atom, but I'm pretty sure it's not that small. I don't even think an electron is that small. Maybe on a quark. How small is a quark?
It takes 1 million atoms lined up to equal the width of a human hair. 1 atom compared to the entire known universe. That would be how the fine-tuning is if you just look at those two things, gravity and the cosmological constant. But as I said, there are dozens of other examples of the way in which these dials have been precisely set so that life can exist. For instance, the strong nuclear force. This is the force that binds the nuclei of atoms together. If you were to decrease the strong nuclear force by just 1 part in 10,000 billion, 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 all we would have in the universe is hydrogen.
Okay. Obviously that didn't happen. And even more importantly,
there is no quantitative expression of the strong nuclear force. Strobel should not be making claims about changing the value of a valueless expression. He possesses no evidence to suggest what would exist without electrostatic interactions. How do we know no other life would be possible? He is presenting a false dichotomy. Again, Strobel keeps thinking everything was made for us instead of thinking we are the result of adapting to the natural world.
No intelligent life would be possible. If he just changed it. 1 part in 10,000 billion, 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 billion. Or consider this. Unless the number of electrons is equivalent to the number of protons to an accuracy of just 1 part in a trillion, 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 then galaxies and stars and planets could never have formed.
this is just completely stupid, okay? The heaviest atom has somewhere around 108 electrons, okay? How can you possibly have 1/billionth of a billionth of a billionth of an electron in an atom? It just doesn't work that way. No. Furthermore, go name me an atom that has 1 billion electrons. And even furthermore, it doesn't matter if the number of electrons does not equal the number of protons. That's how you get ions and charged particles. You can learn this stuff in a general chemistry class.
It's unbelievable. I'll give you, just to illustrate that, one last example of the equivalency between electrons and protons. It would be, how finely tuned is that? That would be like taking a dime and stacking up dimes 236,000 miles to the moon. And then it would be like doing that in another pile, so that you have all of North America with dimes piled all the way up to the moon. And you choose one dime at random, and you spray paint it red, and you mix it up in all those dimes. And you have blindfold a person, and he reaches in, and he can pull out only one dime. It would have to be the red dime. In other words, his chances of pulling out the red dime would be one chance in a trillion, trillion, trillion.
Yes, yep. You're right. It's like standing on top of the Statue of Liberty and taking a shit into a fishbowl on the ground that is 1/billionth of a billionth 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 of a trillionth the size of a proton while it's windy.
Again, that's just one of the parameters. You put all of these together, and it makes a mind-blowing argument for the existence of a creator who set the parameters exactly right so that life could exist. He created a habitat for the people that he eventually created.
The universe is not very habitable for life, considering that we only live on the dry parts of a wet, cooling planet with a finite existence in one solar system, in one galaxy that we know of. Yeah, that's some pretty fine-tuning, isn't it?
Vera Kistiakowsky, who's a professor emeritus at MIT, physics, an expert in physics, former president of the Association of Women in Science, put it this way: the exquisite order displayed by our scientific understanding of the physical world calls for the divine.
One person's opinion versus 100,000, possibly millions of others in the scientific community?
It just calls for the divine. Now, how do atheists avoid this? I mean, you look at that and you go, is that not unbelievable evidence for the existence? Well, they say, wait a minute. What if there was another explanation? What if there were actually an infinite number of invisible universes that we can't see? And by chance, the dials, all these dials and they're spun at random. And because there's an infinite number of universes, we happen to be in the lucky universe. We happen to be in the one that had the dials, by chance, hit the exact right calibration so that life might be possible. And that's the only way I've seen that atheists have been trying to argue against this evidence. Because if you look at it as face, it is almost conclusive that God exists. The problem with that argument is there's absolutely no evidence of an infinite number of other universes.
No evidence of an infinite number of universes? Tell me, dude, what puts the brakes on quantum fluctuations? What stops the inflation at just the right time?
I find this funny because I frequently come across Christians trying to defend their own belief of God by saying he's hiding in another universe, in another realm, dimension or something, which is why we can't observe him in this one. These people are just basically saying that other universes can't exist. So if we do want to assume that this is the only universe, that means God is limited to this universe. Oh my God, he's limited to something. So if he's in this universe and only this universe, why can't we observe him?
Besides, as one physicist told me, I interviewed him for my books, named Robin Collins, interviewed for the Case for a Creator.
Oh, great. Robin Collins. Now I'm going to give you a little history background about this guy. He is a professor of philosophy at Messiah College. He's a PhD in philosophy, but he dropped out of the PhD in physics program at UT Austin. His actual studies conducted in philosophy, not physics or mathematics. And to see a full refutation of all of Collin's claims, link to the sidebar.
He said, you know what, even if the atheists are right, and there is an infinite number of other universes, it would provide only further evidence for a creator.
No, this isn't right, because the theory that's been put forward is that at the start of the Big Bang, there are many universes created, and each universe has the laws set at random. So you're trying to argue that because all these universes exist, there must be a creator. Well, no, because all these universes are random. You can't infer randomness to both finely tuned and a creator.
And I scratched my head and said, how's that possible? He said, I'll use my bread-making machine as an example. He had one of these old bread-making machines. He said, if you want to make an edible loaf of bread, you need a well-designed machine with the right circuitry, the right heating element, the right timer, and you have to have the right ingredients in the right order and in the right proportions, and if you do that, you get a loaf of bread. If you don't do it right, you get a hockey puck, basically, essentially is what you get. Now, he said, a universe is far more complicated than a loaf of bread. And if it takes a finely tuned mechanism and the right ingredients to produce a loaf of bread, then it would require a finely tuned mechanism and finely tuned process to produce many universes, and such a finely tuned mechanism calls out for a creator.
And there you go, straw-manning all these valid arguments, the multi-universe, blah, 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 but he ignores one valid argument, Occam's razor. It's funny how Strobel ignores this one. That's his apologetic game. Anything that easily refutes his word, he ignores it, to make it appear to the audience that no other valid counter-argument exists. Way to go.
So either way, the creator wins. So I believe that the evidence of physics by itself is so powerful. In fact, it was so powerful, it was successful as being a major reason that an atheist, educated at Harvard University, a professor at Georgetown University named Patrick Glynn, it was a central reason why he moved from atheism to Christianity.
Patrick Glynn, again, we just come back to another person's opinion, but if you want to talk about how many people have turned from atheism to theism, then I'm pretty sure the ratio of that from theism to atheism is substantially greater.
He wrote a book about it called God, the Evidence. And here's what he said. Today, the concrete data point strongly in the direction of the God hypothesis. Those who wish to oppose it have no testable theory to marshal, only speculations about unseen universes spun from fertile imaginations. Ironically, he said, the picture of the universe given to us by the most advanced 20th century science is closer in spirit to the vision presented in the book of Genesis, book of Genesis, book of Genesis, book of Genesis, book of Genesis.
And there you have it. Lee Strobel, ladies and gentlemen.